What is up? Merry Christmas Eve to everybody out there from the Gametime Guru, GTG Media. My name is Shane Larson. I'm coming at you with a special edition of the Gametime Grind here on all my social pages, whether it be YouTube, whether it be Twitter, Periscope, whatever you want to call it, or Facebook. I'm going to be coming back at you here in just a second with a few topics, so please tune in. If you catch this live, put some comments in here. Feel free to chime in, even if it's not live and you catch this later. Wherever you're watching it, on whichever platform, please leave some comments and interact because I'll be coming back to check it out. This is the Gametime Grind with the Gametime Guru. Yes, what's going on, everybody? So if you happen to catch this video live or if you happen to catch it later on, please leave me a quick comment, say something, interact with us. Would love to have you guys tune in and chime in with any kind of questions. I just want to go over a few things, wish a Merry Christmas to everybody out there. It's Merry Christmas Eve right now, but happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever you think is the best way to say that from the Gametime Guru and everyone here at GTG Media. Thank you, guys. First things first, listen, this week on the show, I don't want you guys to miss this. I know it's Christmas Eve. I know everybody's going to be hanging out with their families, but I do have a few things I want to talk about. So make sure if you catch this, listen, Kobe Ward, state championship quarterback from Rocky Mountain High School here in Meridian, Idaho. If you're in the Treasure Valley, even if you're not, you need to listen to this guy. He's got a lot of golden nuggets to share with us this week on the show. I launched that episode on Thursday today instead of our normal Friday, obviously because tomorrow's Christmas, and I wanted to respect everybody's time. So yes, please take a listen to that episode. It's going to be fantastic. You guys, he drops a lot of information for us, a lot of knowledge, getting to understand what it's like from a high school athlete's perspective, playing this year in an unprecedented situation with no fans, limited fan bases and whatnot. So please make sure to check out the Gametime Guru podcast on any of your favorite platforms. I can leave it here in the comments with a link to it. So give me 1 second. This link right here that I'm going to put into the comments is something that you guys can just click on. It will take you to my Linktree page, which will allow you to choose it from whichever platform you prefer. Now, all I ever ask is that you just leave me a review on iTunes. If you're on Apple Podcasts, that's what I mean by iTunes, Apple Podcasts, just leave me a review. Just when you check out the show, leave me a review. Let me know what you thought about it. Also, check this out. Nicked myself when I was shaving this morning and it won't stop bleeding. Look at that. I just touched it. Yuck. Live production with a bleeding neck. Hopefully I'm alive by the end of this, right? Gross. Don't focus on that too much. Guys, listen, the college football playoff is starting up. I wanted to talk about this real quick. I was on the show with Corey. If you guys didn't know, I do help run a podcast network out of Ohio. It's an Ohio State-based podcast network called the Scarlet and Great Empire. We did one last year for Unscripted Ohio. However, we kind of branched off and did our thing this year. And I was joining Corey Thompson, for his show this week, and we discussed the college football playoff, specifically on the Buckeyes part of things. Super interesting stuff going on. And then the other part of that is what I want you guys to stay tuned for on my show is a discussion with Bill Barnett, former Alabama walk-on from the 70s when he played under Paul Bear Bryant. We discuss this week in a bonus episode coming up that I'll drop next week, the college football playoff and how you can expand it. We're talking about expansion to 6 teams compared to the normal 8 to 12 to 16 teams that we've heard discussed prior. This is actually a model that he was talking about with Coach Gene Stallings, and it actually makes sense. So I would love for you guys to tune in and listen to that. We're talking about the expansion, because I keep saying this. If any year were a year to try an expanded playoff with all the canceled bowl games, with all the, craziness going on, no fans here, no fans there, minimal fans here, why not just expand it? If the NCAA is up for a cash grab anyways, because they're trying to recoup some sort of money that they lost throughout the season, why not expand the playoff and give yourself a chance at like getting a ton of more revenue with the TV sources? You know what I mean? So that's one of the things I was looking at it this year. I do think, that the best quote unquote 4 teams in college football are in the playoff. I know A&M has their argument against, Ohio State and Notre Dame. The problem is that you're running into this season with the college football playoff, and you've heard it before. You can't use previous year's arguments for this year. It's, well, Ohio State and the Big Ten and the Pac-12, everything, they only played a certain amount of games. They can't control that. And this is a crazy year that, they started in October. I mean, obviously they would have loved to play those games. It's not like they were wanting to not play those games. So you can't use the same arguments that you used prior. The one thing is, I do think they got the top 4 teams. It wasn't that hard of a decision. While I see Texas A&M's argument, I also see the committee's decision there being just correct. It's correct because who are they going to put them in 4 to watch them get slammed by Alabama again? It's tough. It is very difficult, but I do see their arguments. It's a weird year. I do think Alabama is at a top level. Clemson's playing well right now, but they have some holes. I think people get caught up on the like most recent games that you see of teams, and you're only as good as your last game. So teams like fan bases get caught up on like this last game, right? Well, yeah, Clemson ran through Notre Dame. Notre Dame was moving on them in the first half, by the way, like the first quarter, and then they left some points on the board. And then Notre Dame's got, Clemson's got talent across the board, chemistry on offense, and their defense was flying around. So they locked in, and then they just got the momentum rolling. But keep in mind, like Clemson's had some holes too. I love Clemson. I'm not a Clemson hater, but I'm a Buckeyes fan. I'm not a Clemson hater though. That's a Buckeyes fan. I'm one of those weird guys. I do respect them. I think they're a great program, obviously. But they do have holes. The same with Ohio State, the same with Notre Dame, and the same with Alabama. Alabama, to me, looks like the most well-rounded team in college football. However, they do have holes. I think offensively, they have a million weapons to take over at any moment. They don't make a ton of mistakes. But defensively, they do have gaps where if you have an elite offense, you can take advantage of those if you do it right. But you can't leave points on the board. I don't think Notre Dame stands a chance because they have a tendency to leave points on the board. They'll drive, field goal, or a missed field goal, or they fumble it, or they give it away. Like they drive and then a penalty sets them back. I'm not counting Notre Dame out completely. I think they have athletes, but Alabama's also got like a few holes, but I don't think Notre Dame exploits them. I do think Clemson and or Ohio State have the tools to at least exploit those holes that Alabama has. Whether or not they beat Alabama is another question, but I think they have the talent to exploit the weaknesses that Alabama does have, which are very few. But considering this season was crazy in football, it just sucked. It was weird. I'm a Boise State guy too, so that was a really, really odd end of the season, which we'll get to in just a second. Super odd. I'm happy to see the college football playoff. I'm curious to see what happens. Am I as confident as a Buckeyes fan as I was going into last season? No. But I will say this. We haven't seen the Buckeyes team get any kind of momentum. Like there's this whole conversation of they've only played through the fresher team. No, they're not. If anybody has watched Ohio State, you would know that's completely not the case. You're dealing with, you never have the right, like your full team. Week to week, it's always been different. You don't get a rhythm. They have no rhythm. That's the one benefit, if any, of playing a full season is you get a rhythm by the end of it. And Ohio State's been known to do that in previous years too. They get a rhythm by the end of the year. This year, they haven't seemed to get in a rhythm. So the only thing that I'm actually optimistic about here is the run game has been getting better and better and better week by week by week. And then obviously in the Big Ten championship, they were able to utilize that run game when Justin Fields could not figure it out. But keep in mind, for anybody out there who's just a casual fan who wasn't paying attention to the last 2 games of Ohio State, just saw the stat lines or whatever it may be. I mean, they're out 20 plus players last game. A lot of I had 2 receivers, one of which was their superstar in Olave. I mean, and then defense, you're patched all across the board. Defense, you had patched up positions because of this COVID situation. Like, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to put guys in places and just hope to win the game, and you manage the game. You're not going to see the blowouts that you saw last year. So when people are like, well, Ohio State's not the same team. Well, yeah, they haven't had a chance to put their full team on the field and actually just get a rhythm going for more than like 1 or 2 games at a time. So here's the deal. Assuming Ohio State can get their players back, it's a big if, I think they have a shot to at least compete with Clemson. If they don't, that's a very hard ask to be able to go in and compete with Clemson. Plus, I don't know if you guys have heard any more on Justin Fields, but Fields hurt his throwing thumb earlier in the game this last week against Northwestern, which was apparent. He could not throw the ball. And it wasn't just that he was having struggles with accuracy, but he was struggling mightily to throw the ball after he had the injury to his hand. So if he's not fully healthy, that's a brutal game against Clemson because you have to utilize your offense has 2 elite wide receivers and then your running game. But you have, like, it depends You got to be able to throw the ball. Also, Fields is going to have to run the ball and stay healthy running the ball. He's going to have to pull it sometimes and keep the defense honest if Ohio State even has a chance of staying in this game. Do I think they can do it? Yes, I think they're physical enough. Their running game is obviously much improved from week one, and they're looking like the shades of themselves from last year in the running situation. But they've got to be able to get their passing game going and get the chemistry down, and they've got a week to figure that out. It's going to be tough. Lawrence coming back for Clemson. They've got great chemistry on offense. That's no surprise whatsoever. Not a surprise whatsoever. Clemson's got the chemistry on offense. Their defense is finally healthy and playing all together, assuming everybody's good and they can keep themselves during the holidays. Everybody's safe. Everyone gets to play. Clemson's got a good, well-rounded team. They're looking good the last 2 weeks, but they do have some holes. Alabama, again, like I said, I think they're the front runner, but they also showed that they could be passed on. So just keep that in mind. People can throw the ball. So Clemson and Ohio State, if healthy, can exploit that to some capacity. So it's going to be a fun college football playoff, although the whole season was just a crappy season as football fans, right? So that was kind of weird. Guys, this month, I wanted to touch base on this as well. It's super exciting, kind of coming into the end of the Game Time Gurus 2020 year. For a lot of us, 2020 was just an odd year. We're still kind of going through the issues. I mean, starting with Kobe Bryant's death, you knew 2020 was just going to be a weird year. And then we got hit with a global pandemic and the election and all the things that affect us in a mental standpoint. As for the podcast, it was the best year of the podcast since it started. I was able to continue to grow and expand the show. And I'm super grateful for that. So thank you to all the listeners who have supported me from day one. But, in 2020, I mean, we had an amazing slate of guests on this show. Just amazing interviews, just learning from so many different people. If you haven't done so yet, feel free to subscribe to my podcast. It is free content. Subscribe to the podcast on any platform that you'd like and listen to some of our interviews. I mean, you don't have to listen to them episode by episode by episode. You can go back and listen to this and that. They're relevant anytime you listen to them. You can listen to episodes I had back 3-4 years ago. They're still relevant because they're interviews with different sports figures. You get to hear their stories. Man, I'm talking like just being able to talk to people like Jerry Stackhouse this year and Walter Bond, Bruce Buffer from the UFC, all these names, Justinian Jessup, Kobe War this month. Ryan Lundgren. Colby Blaine. I can't even name them all right now for this last year in 2020. It has most certainly been a blessing. And I'm grateful for all the listeners, all the supporters, whether you follow me on social media, whether you actually listen to my podcast, whatever, all of you guys, I'm just super grateful for. So thank you so much for making 2020 an amazing year. We've got some good stuff cooking in 2021. We're already planning out the next couple months worth of interviews. I'm excited to get some mixed martial artists on the show, some sports analysts on the show, some big name sports analysts for that matter, some esports content coming in. You guys, we've got a lot coming for the Game Time Guru. So make sure you're subscribed. Follow me on my social media platforms. Subscribe to the podcast. We've got content coming your way. It helps us disconnect from some of the craziness in the world because we get to hear from sports figures and kind of get into our own space. So just appreciate all of you guys. Again, Merry Christmas Eve right now from the Game Time Guru and GTG Media. I appreciate every single one of you. Love y'all. There's nothing you can do about it. And we'll be coming to you next time.